Hey, welcome to Studio One Artist Training Session from SFJ Academy. I'm Foster Johnson. I'm going to be your host on this very short, quick start to get started in Studio One with a new song. So if you want to mix a new song, first you start up Studio One. You'll have this interface that you're looking at right here in front of you. There's a couple of neat things. There's a couple of neat features right here inside of the start page for Studio One Artist version. One of them is you can actually load up your artist profile. So if you place some metadata in here, there's a 3 ellipse icon here, and this will allow you to pick your own photograph. You can put your face in there like I did, set up your artist profile, and this will carry its way through all of the titling and all of the tagging of all of your songs. So you don't have to enter in that information multiple times. You can also visit your SoundCloud account if you have one. I would go to SoundCloud and set yourself up a nice account. This will keep track of how many people play your songs, if anybody likes your songs, if anybody comments about your songs, how many songs you have at SoundCloud, and you can go back and forth with your songs as you edit and create them. There's a nice news feed over here. So if you're connected to the internet with Studio One, and I assume you are going to be able to see the latest news coming from Presonus. And they will let you know about new plugins, new features, new demos and tutorials. By the way, demos and tutorials right here to the right. So if you're new to this application, you want to learn about it quickly, here's a great way, besides listening to me, how you can get started in a hurry. There's news feeds, SoundCloud, artist profiles, but most importantly, over here on the left, there's 2 options here. I can open an existing document, meaning I've got a project that I've already worked on, and I can create a new song. Before I create a new song, I want to make sure that my application is set up correctly, especially if this is the first time you started using it with a new interface. So as you can see, there's a setup panel here in the middle of this interface, and it allows you to make sure that your device is loaded here. I'm using a Studio Live. This is a Studio Live AR8. It's a USB interface for my training location here. It's nice and compact. It's an 8-channel, and it has some USB send and receives, so I can actually perform live or narrate live and also hear what's going on and monitor it through either the interface or through the computer. So right now I've got Studio One set up to work with Studio Live AR8. You want to make sure that's correct as you set these settings down here in the lower portion of this interface window. Most important thing that's for you if you're doing a lot of narration or you're doing a lot of audio tracks is the sample rate. So the smaller the samples, the more you can limit the latency, how long it takes for the audio that you're hearing in your headphones to match up with the audio that's coming into your microphone. Unfortunately, the smaller the samples, the more powerful your computer needs to be, and there can be some noise, some pops, and some crackles inside of samples that are too small. So I'm going to stick with the default, which was 512 samples as soon as I connected my Studio Live AR. The sample rate is going to be the output of my actual audio file. 44.1 is going to be fine. It is acceptable for MP3s and CD quality. I'm not doing video with this, otherwise I might go up to 44.8. My bit depth, I'm going to go 32-bit. I'm going to be working with floating point processing, floating point 32-bit with an open floating point window or a headroom area, and that allows me to sample down without any kind of constraints on the outer limits of my audio frequency range. Input latency, once again, I can check, and as you can see, I can't change these, so they're based on my 512 samples. For now, since this is a quick start, I'm not going to go over the other options here in options, but most importantly, you want to make sure that you're not using Windows audio. You want to have the device that you're using connected. If you have no device, obviously you would be able to use Windows audio and work through your computer speakers and microphone input. So back to I'm going to go ahead and click OK. I'm checking out my area here for setup, just making sure everything's okay. If I have a MIDI device, this is where I would connect it. So I could set up a new keyboard and connect it to my Yamaha over there. And I can also configure audio devices. Once again, I can set up anything that's external to the computer in the application. Two other things before we jump into creating a new song. Sometimes you might want to check for updates. So as Presonus comes out with new features and new updates, you can check for updates. And if I click on this, I'm hoping that there are no new updates. I should be up to date, and certainly I am. The About Studio One tells you what your license number is and which version you're running. So I'm running Studio One Artist on this particular machine. I don't have the Studio One Professional here in my office where I do my training videos. So we're going to have a bit of a limited resource set, but we should be okay for what we're trying to do. We just want to get started. So how do I get started? I'm going to create a new song. As soon as I create a new song, I'm presented with the new song dialog box. The first thing I'm going to do is give it a title. So I'm just going to say example, since I'm just kind of showing you how this gets set up. I want to put it in the right location. So on this PC, I've got a couple of different hard drives. I'm going to make sure I put it on job jackets here, and I'm going to stick it inside of my SFJ Academy online courses. And since it is a Studio One Artist course, I'm going to put it in the example project folder. I'll select that folder, and it will start to store backups, and it will also start to store my actual file that I start out with. There are a couple features that are important here. Once again, I can confirm that my sample rate is correct for what I want. There's my resolution. I was using 32-bit float out there on the outside, so I'm going to use 32-bit float for this particular song. The time base can be based on bars, frames, seconds, and samples. Just for the sake of getting into this application, we're not going to discuss the differences here. It's kind of what you're used to using. I'm going to stick with samples. You can always change it after the fact. By setting the song length here, I'm just giving myself enough space in the computer's memory as well as the headroom that's necessary to render the song out. So I'm kind of limiting my working processor to 5 minutes worth of song here, even though my song's not going to be that long. The tempo, I'm going to decide based upon if I'm using any kind of loops or I'm using any kind of samples. I might want to make sure that my tempo matches. There is the ability to stretch audio files so they match the song tempo. But of course, if I'm working at 115 beats, then I want to stick with that particular tempo for all of my assets and all of my elements that I might bring in that are part of music construction kits. Time signature 4/4, I'm good with that. I am going to leave stretch audio files to song tempo on, and therefore if I do put in something with a different tempo, Studio Live will try to match it up so the beats match the bars and the measures. So you've got a couple options over here for styles. There's interfaces based on what you have connected to this, and I've got one thing that I've always used. I'm just going to use an empty song for right now. So I click this open, and there is my empty song. And the first thing I'm going to probably want to do is I want to record some audio to this. To do that, I can go up to the actual track menu. I can add a track. As you can see, I can add audio for mono, audio for stereo, and I can also add an instrument track. So I don't really want to go into the details of mixing actual music construction kit type of audio sources. So let's add a stereo audio track. So the most important thing here, there's a little area at the bottom where I can pull this down. I can kind of see my inputs and whether or not I'm going in left and right. This is based on the last song that I had set up. So just to check that, I'm just going to show you song setup. If you want to make sure that you can hear your song in the playback, then I'm going to check and see that left and right are made up of my inputs, which are on my Presonus over there, my Studio Live AR8. They're made up of mic line 1 and mic line 2. On the output, they're coming back to the AR8, and they're coming out of 3 and 4. And I'm getting a nice mix there, and it's coming back through the USB into my headphones. So I'm okay with that. Just to get started, let's record something. So I've got mute, solo, I've got arm for record, and now I've got a monitor going on so I can actually hear a little bit of a loop of my audio coming back from what we're recording here. So at the very bottom center of the window, move my cursor down here, you'll see I've got stop, I've got play or start, and I've got record. And I also am looking in the tooltip. I don't know if you can see that. It might be below my recording window, but there is a asterisk on the number pad, which will start recording. So I'm actually recording right now, and I think that should be sufficient to just give you an example how easy it is to get started. Stop that. Let's see if we can hear this on the playback. If I hold my shift key down and hit my B, I'll move my playhead back to the beginning. if you can hear that, you can see that that was my recording. Real simple. I guess the next step would be to save that file and then go ahead and close down the application and get started with something else. I'm going to turn off that monitor in case we got some feedback. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'm going to be making more of these as we study more ways to add automation and also some of those virtual instruments you see over here on the right hand side of my interface. So thanks for listening. Hope you learned a little bit, and come back soon. Thanks.